Okay. Hello. I didn't even put my coming back soon screen. Hello. I can hear myself, so let's mute the stream there. Yeah. Okay. So I'm back doing this. Been doing some Pokemon Nuzlocke live streams for a little bit. I just did one last night, but it's been a while since I've done a Bleach random fight live stream. In fact, let me change the title of the live stream to Bleach random fight. Sure, whatever. Yeah, so it's been a while. I'm a little bit rusty, maybe, because I've not been watching Bleach. When I was doing the live streams before, I was like binging on Bleach, and now I've not really watched much Bleach for a little bit. But we're gonna do this because it's fun, and I want to do some more. So, if you don't know what we're doing, I have a wheel right here of 232 Bleach characters. Obviously, you see a lot of Ichigo here, but different states, different forms. Not like states, but yeah, different forms. So notable forms, not like Stark when he was injured near the end of his fight with Kyoraku. It's Stark. And I'm not doing like Stark and then Resurrection Stark, because Stark can just use his Resurrection. So I guess let's have a look here. Look, so we have Renji, AOTS, so Attack on the Soul Society. I guess you could say like Renji in the World of the Living, but any character will get the same debuff as in the World of the Living, so it doesn't make much sense. So Attack on the Soul Society. The soul. I think that's what that's supposed to. Okay, you know what? I'm not too sure what that stands for. This was a really bad example. It's been a while. But I'm guessing Attack on the Soul. Oh no, it's Agent of the Shimigami. So yeah, it is when we first see him. And he will have that debuff on, but I guess he's notable enough and we actually see him fight like that. Sorry about that. And then we have Soul Society pre-Bankai, and then we have Bankai, and he doesn't really change in power level beyond that, really. Notably, at least. We have Aizen, we have Turn Back the Pendulum, Soul Society, Fate Karakura Base, Hokyoku Fused, so when he starts to, like, use it, because we don't really know exactly when he fuses with the Hokyoku. But Fate Karakura Base would be sort of the same as Wako Mundo, I suppose. So maybe I should change that to Wako Mundo. But we don't really see anything of that. I'll leave it like that. Chrysalis, Deicide, Limit, Butterflies, and Hollow, and Sealed. Yeah. Right, so we have an idea of what we're doing. Let's see who our first combatant is. And also, if we have a really bad pairing, I usually backpedal. Or like I respin. Sorry, not backpedal. So let's have a look. So our first combatant for our first fight is TSUKISHIMA. Interesting one. TSUKISHIMA versus TAIKON. Ooh. I really don't know what to talk about with that one. It's a really weird fight. Sure. It usually takes me one fight to properly warm up. So let's just go with that and see how that goes. So first up, we have TSUKISHIMA. Also, if my spelling is bad, oh well. TSUKISHIMA color should we give Tsukishima? He like blends in. Let's make him blend in a little bit. That's too much blending in. Let's just make it white. TSUKISHIMA versus TAIKON. I did TAIKON lips, but I think that's wrong. Is that? Is TAIKON? I thought TAIKON was the tentacle guy, not the guy with the lips. Or was that Garuga? This is the Bleach Hellverse movie. No, TAIKON is the lips guy. I had it right. Okay. So let's give TAIKON a very obnoxious pink. Opposite of Tsukishima. Okay, let's start talking. Tsukishima. Tsukishima is a Fullbringer. He is human, but he seems very capable. He is good at using Bringer Light, so he can like stand on the air and jump around and stuff. Similar thing to what Souls can do, but he is a human. He seems to have a decent amount of combat experience, maybe at least a little bit more than the other Fullbringers. Not as much as Ginjo, obviously. Tsukishima, he seems to have very strong like mental faculties, I suppose. Like the only time where he seems to be a bit perturbed is when Ichigo cuts off his entire arm and then Orihime heals him back, but otherwise he seems to be very confident. He is very intelligent. He's an intelligent fighter. He, with Ginjo, planned the whole thing with, and he's also pretty cold-blooded too with what he does to Ichigo, but he's not quite Aizen level, but he also is pretty good at manipulating people, not just because of his ability, but in general anyway. He's a good actor and stuff like that, so I feel like personality-wise, he would have good banter with TAIKON, actually, because TAIKON is a lot about banter and makes a lot of jokes about, you know, attractiveness and things like that. I'm sure TAIKON would like how Tsukishima looks, you know. Tsukishima's main ability is Book of the End, which is he has this little bookmark portable thing, and it turns into the guard of a katana that is supposed to be able to cut through anything, when in reality it's more so it can cut through memories, or like when he cuts someone he can insert himself into their memories, and not only does it just fool people. So okay, let's not talk about TAIKON yet, but if Tsukishima cut TAIKON, Tsukishima could make him like TAIKON's idol, or TAIKON's like partner, or his lover, or something like that. So TAIKON would be very conflicted on fighting him. And maybe, you know, TAIKON... The thing is, TAIKON is in hell, so he's not a very moralistic character as we see it. He doesn't seem to... I don't know if he would actually have anybody in his life who he would just not attack, because he wants to get... Okay, so this is an interesting fight then. Okay. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit more later then. So Tsukishima, not only can he like make somebody believe that he was in his past, but he makes it the reality for that person that he was in their past. So when he cuts Byakuya, he makes him like his master, or like his training partner, and so now Tsukishima has all of those fake memories, all of those memories about fighting him. He has all of the knowledge that he would get if those memories were true. So he knows all of his techniques, he knows his weaknesses, he knows all of his moves, and so because he cut Byakuya and inserted himself into Byakuya's past as being like a training partner, he now has the abilities and knowledge of being a training partner to Byakuya. Now, that doesn't mean that Tsukishima... When I first heard this, I thought that meant that Tsukishima was strong enough to fight Byakuya. That doesn't necessarily need to be true. It doesn't mean that Tsukishima is now physically as strong like as strong as he needs to be to fight Byakuya, but it's as if he was. So it's still knowledge based. It's not like, I don't think Tsukishima could cut Byakuya and then insert himself into his past as being like Byakuya's wrestling rival, where Tsukishima was massive and muscular, and then he becomes massive and muscular, and he can like throw, you know, like an entire building or something like that. That's not true. It still means he would have the fighting technique, but it doesn't mean he can physically make himself more powerful. He can't cut somebody and insert into their past that he was the most powerful person in the world. Like, that's not how it works. Yeah. So it's usually more emotional or intel-based manipulation or granting. And then that's pretty much it for Tsukishima. The only other thing is he seems to have insane durability, because he gets a hole blasted in his chest, like he doesn't have a heart anymore, or like, you know, his lungs are exposed and stuff like that. And he continues to live, even though he's a human, for several minutes, like for like, you know, 15-20 minutes. It's insane. He should be instantly dead. He seems to have more durability than like a Konpaku, which is crazy. Anyway, I've talked about Tsukishima a lot. Let's talk about TAIKON. So firstly, TAIKON is a sinner of hell, so it's going to be hard for Tsukishima to emotionally manipulate him to not do something, because he has clearly done abhorrent things in his past to get into hell. So maybe even if Tsukishima like cut him and made him, oh, I'm your father or I'm your uncle, you can't kill me, TAIKON would be like, well, I don't care. I will fight you if it means I have to get out of hell. I'll fight you anyway. And, you know, because he's been living in hell for so long, killing somebody doesn't mean the end. It just means pain. It doesn't mean they die, because they're going to come back again, even if they're not in hell currently. Like if TAIKON goes out into the world of the living, which is a weird thing anyway. But I don't think Tsukishima's manipulation is going to work on TAIKON too well. TAIKON is very, very strong. A lot of characters in hell are very strong because they've had so many years of constantly being pursued and chased and crushed to either make them crumble or to make them constantly train and try to get stronger. Obviously they're trapped in hell, so if they all broke loose, it could maybe mean the end of the world if, you know, we didn't have someone like Genryusa Yamamoto observing stuff. But otherwise, these are incredibly powerful beings usually. Like, the top beings of hell are insanely powerful, but there's no escaping hell, apparently, until we get to like the strength power of like Vaster Lord Ichigo. So TAIKON is pretty strong. He fights against Uryu, I think mostly just Uryu. Yes, but he could definitely, he sort of has the advantage for a while. He could probably fight Renji really well also. So he's very strong. And when we see people like Renji pull up to the Fullbringers, even though Renji doesn't fight Tsukishima, he dominates. They have so much more combat experience than the Fullbring. The Fullbringers, Execution. Execution are really are lacking in combat experience, and they are really just humans. So even though they have some crazy abilities, they aren't really much of a match for Soul Reapers, and Byakuya takes down Tsukishima without taking too much damage. But taking some damage, you know. Yeah, and TAIKON can also make lips appear all over his body to absorb reishi. Interesting thing about that is Tsukishima's a human, so he's not a reishi-based life form like Uryu. Uryu is a Quincy, so he uses reishi, but the Fullbringers don't use reishi. They use like the soul of an object, which you could argue is comprised out of reishi, because that's what Konpaku souls are. So you could say it's probably still reishi-based. So if, I mean, Tsukishima doesn't really do this, but if he used his like abilities with Fullbringer to like make an attack, or I don't know, make like a jet of full bringer light, like bringer light, TAIKON could probably absorb that, but that's not really a hard counter to Tsukishima, because he pretty much just fights with his sword and then using his ability to manipulate people and break them down to make opportunities for him to cut them. Yeah, so what would happen? How would this fight actually go down? Let's actually talk about it, because this has been pretty slow, but this is interesting. So I think Tsukishima would probably struggle to cut TAIKON. TAIKON is very powerful, and Tsukishima would definitely be on the back foot. And TAIKON, I mean, if he slashed at TAIKON, TAIKON could catch it with his lips. I imagine Tsukishima would be on the back foot. They would probably be bantering together a lot, because they both seem like the characters to do that. TAIKON would probably be gloating and corner Tsukishima after beating him up, and then maybe be like, oh, I'm gonna suck the life out of you now. Tsukishima tries to slash at him. TAIKON makes lips appears and catches the blade, and then maybe Tsukishima can do a flick and cut TAIKON, or just go through, like phase through TAIKON's lips, and then he would implant himself into TAIKON's past as like some sort of mental figure or something like that, and TAIKON would maybe be confused. He seems more emotional than the others, but when push comes to shove, he is a sinner and he is willing to do whatever. I mean, he was willing to go through a plot that involved killing and imprisoning an innocent human girl into hell forever, as well as multiple other soul reapers going into hell together. So he's willing to kill a innocent small child just for the hopes of maybe escaping hell. Now, if Tsukishima, I don't know what he might want with Tsukishima. Maybe Tsukishima, if he finds out about his ability, he could think maybe Tsukishima can cut the what are the Guardians of Hell called again? They're really cool, but maybe he can cut the Guardians of Hell and make them believe that I'm not a sinner or something like that, even though Hell kind of seems to have its own mind. I don't know, but it's an interesting ability, so maybe TAIKON will have some motivation to kill Tsukishima and trap him in hell forever and try and exploit him for something. Either way, TAIKON would probably just be willing to kill Tsukishima, no matter who Tsukishima implants himself as. I mean, even if TAIKON is brought to his knees, TAIKON is probably selfish enough to want to live, so if Tsukishima is pretending to be like, oh, it's me, your lover, you know, all of those years we spent together, how about let's spend forever in hell, we don't need to escape. As soon as Tsukishima tries to make a move to kill TAIKON seems pretty tanky. TAIKON would probably just retaliate and see that as betrayal and then be willing to kill Tsukishima. So I think emotionally TAIKON would be a hard one to manipulate, definitely more challenging for Tsukishima, and TAIKON is just stronger than Tsukishima and would begin the fight with cornering him. I think Tsukishima could push back emotionally a little bit, but as soon as he makes a move to actually kill TAIKON would just be willing to kill Tsukishima. So I think this goes to TAIKON, but this is an interesting one, and it's weird that a henchman to a fake main villain in a Bleach movie, because Shuren is like the poster villain, but then there's a twist villain or whatever, so he's not really in the film much. TAIKON is a henchman to a poster villain of a movie, and he would beat the main antagonist that is also the poster antagonist of the Fullbringer arc, and then there's a twist villain. So there's a little bit of similarity there, but also TAIKON is just a henchman. So I guess it's kind of funny that TAIKON could probably beat Tsukishima when I guess Byakuya had to be brought in to kill Tsukishima or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, let's get to fight number 2. We spent a long one, but I'm just warming up, so hopefully the other ones will go a bit quicker. So let me just get rid of our text here. Also, I just flashed up my Pokemon live stream by accident. fight number 2. I usually do 5 fights, but I've talked a lot. I've talked for 20 minutes on that first fight, so maybe we'll just do 3 today. I don't know. Anyway, let's spin the wheel again. Our first pattern is Hanataro, or Hanataro. Hanataro Yamada of Squad 4. I think he's like the 7th seat, or like the leader of Squad, like assisting Squad 2 or something. Chad Wakomundo entry. Chad would win. That's not really a good fight. So let's try another spin. Hanataro versus Kusaka with the Oin. Okay, one more chance for somebody to fight Hanataro, and if it's Kusaka would win. Hanataro is a pretty weak character in the grand scheme of things, so last chance for Hanataro. Kagorosa, my god, yeah, Hanataro is going to be absolutely murdered. Let's just start afresh, a new spin. So combatant number 1, no Hanataro. He's lost his chance. Chad Wakomundo entry. We just spammed for him a couple. Okay, that is incredibly lucky considering we have over 230 opponents. So sure, I would love to talk about Chad. So Chad Wakomundo entry versus Harry Bell. Harry Bell would win. Let's try another spin for Chad Wakomundo entry because I do want to talk about him. Hans's gang. Ooh! Okay, so this is a group. I have a few group ones. I didn't realize I had the entirety of Hans's gang. Let's talk about this. I really want to talk about this, actually. It's weird that did I include Hans's gang individually, too? Because I feel like it's weird. That's kind of weird of me. Hansa... Hansa... Oh, I do. So I do have Hans's gang individually, but then I also have a group Hans's gang. I don't have many of those, but sure, let's do that. That actually sounds really interesting. Okay, back to here. Wow, okay, so Hans's gang. Hans's gang, what color should we give Hans's gang? They're kind of weird. Let's give them like a peachy color. I feel like that makes sense. A peachy color. Slightly different colors there, but that's okay. And then Chad. Waco, what is it? Waco Mundo entry. And let's make Chad. Chad is awesome. Let's give him a... What color is Chad? I don't know what color to give Chad. Let's just give him like sort of a yellowy orange. I don't know if that works. Hold on. I guess let's give him a deep red. Sure. Yeah. So Hans's gang versus Chad Wakomundo entry. So this is Chad when he enters Wakomundo after training with Renji. This is I mean, I think I think I don't know if he has his Arm of the Devil. I think that's something he figures out in his fight with Gantenbein. So this means he would only have his base arm and then his Arm of the Giant. Yeah. And yes, so that's what he would have. And previously, before he started training, he almost gets killed by D-Roy. And D-Roy is like, you know, D-Roy is the runt and is supposed to be like almost considered like defective, because he was the weaker in his hollow form as his time as an Antuches or Gillian or whatever. He was the weakest, and then also he got a bite taken out of him early on, so he just basically he couldn't grow any stronger really after he lost part of his body to Grimjow. So he has like a stunted growth, and then he's also the weakest of the group of Grimjow's numeros, or his fraction. And he almost got blitzed and killed by... Chad almost got blitzed and killed by him. Then he went through strenuous training against Renji's Bankai for a few months, I think, or like several weeks. Non-stop, pretty much always doing that, and Renji obviously wasn't in any trouble at the beginning at least, but by the end he was pretty fiercely going up against Renji's Bankai, and we see him fight alongside Renji after the fight with Gantenbein. And I guess Chad might get a little bit stronger, but most of his power boost comes from the fact that he has access to his Arm of the Devil and La Muerte. So he doesn't have that here. But after which he fights the tongue guy with Ice Ringer, and I forgot the guy, but immediately in the entry he fights him and wins pretty well, but he struggles against Ice Ringer's speed. So Chad has an issue with speed and range. But he has a really good power and very good durability. Obviously he dies to he gets cut down by Noitora, but that's Noitora. Yeah, so that's kind of where Chad's at. Hans's gang is comprised of 3 guys. Let me see if I can remember their names. I'll find them on my little card thing. It's Genga, which Chad actually fought and defeated. But we have Genga, Kuzuru, and Gingai Doko, who's the little goblin guy. Kizuru is the really boring, edgy assassin guy, the tall one with the big red hair. Kind of looks like Jesse from Pokemon. And they all have Bakotos. So let's start with Genga. Genga is really cool, and he is the Stone Wall Bakoto. And he fights Chad, but he fights Chad... this is in the... Oh, wait a second. He fights Chad in the Kasamyoji filler arc. Oh my goodness. In the Kasamyoji filler arc, is Chad? Does Chad have his new arm? I think he does, actually, because it takes place... He does have his new arm. Oh, shoot. I thought this was, for some reason, I was thinking this was Chad before he got his new arm. But no, this is with his Waco Mundo entry. In fact, he might even use the Arm of the Devil against Hans's gang. I didn't think about that. Okay, so he does manage to win in a difficult fight against Genga, who's really cool. Now, if we imagine this is like a free-for-all, Chad would just lose. Gengai Doko has the thing where he can eat his blade, like eat the Bakoto, and then his body turns more into a blade, and he gets like steel skin. And then what's his name? I forget this guy's name because it's so boring. It's such a boring name. No offense, but Kuziryu or something. he can turn his body into mist and then form back into his body and attack. Kind of like how Gengar can like fuse with the wall and then do that. So he like fuses with the wall and does that, and Chad basically has to tank a hit and then retaliate, and he can punch using La Muerte against the wall and just destroy everything and kill Gengar at the same time. So he doesn't have access to that. Do I think Chad could still beat Gengar without La Muerte? Maybe. I think it would be pretty close, but with the other two doing a free-for-all, Chad's just gonna lose. But if we because Chad is definitely gonna lose here, what is the best he could do? So if we did this one at a time, if Hansa's gang fought one at a time, one-on-one duels, even though they're assassins and they wouldn't really do that. Let's just suspend our disbelief so we can actually have a decent talk about this. What is the best that Chad could do? Let's say who do you... I think Kuzuru is probably maybe the weakest, but if Chad fought Kuzuru first, would he win? I think Chad would get cut up because like Chad doesn't have the reaction time or speed, but if he manages to pin Kizuru sorry, I really struggle with this guy's name, Kizuru down, he maybe could do like a massive El Directo and like blast everything away, because he has more of a bigger boom attack. Maybe that could hurt him, or if he manages to grab him and hit him, Kizuru seems frail even though he manages to survive. He's the only survivor, so I don't know. But I think Chad would have to be injured pretty badly after his fight with Kizuru, as he would be with Gengar. But maybe less so with Kizuru. So how would he do against Gingai Doko? Gingai Doko can turn his body into a blade, but Chad does have the arm of the giant, so Chad would definitely have to use the arm of the giant, use the shield, and maybe get Gingai Doko stuck in the shield, but then he doesn't have his other arm to finish him off with. So he'd probably have to do a point-blank El Directo, but then Gingai Doko could tank it. So now that I'm thinking about this, I don't know if Chad could beat Gingai Doko. I'm not too sure. Maybe he could, but I don't think Chad could easily take any of these enemies. I think he would have to get injured at least a little bit, but I think he would win against all of them. If he did them sequentially, I think he would probably not be able to beat the second guy. Definitely not the third. But these aren't people who would fight like one after one after one. These are assassins that, you know, don't quite have that code of honor that Soul Reapers do. So I think they would probably all attack Chad at once and Chad would just lose. So yeah, the best I can see Chad doing is maybe stalemating on the second guy if they took it one by one. But otherwise, no, Chad doesn't stand a chance. So let's get on to fight number 3. And I'm realizing I'm talking a lot, I'm waffling a lot while I'm doing this. I apologize, but I'm getting back into the groove, and it's taking me a little bit more time to recall things. And like I had no idea what to talk about. What is this? Chad Wakemundo entry? No. Why am I getting that? That is insanely lucky. This isn't this isn't like a weighted thing. I only have one entry of him. Okay. So Ichigo Full Bring Cloak. Sure. Ichigo Full Bring Cloak versus Kisuke Urahara. Kisuke would win. Let's try another spin for Ichigo Full Bring Cloak. Stark would win. Ichigo Full Bring Cloak is like maybe a captain level, maybe lieutenant level. Soifone would win. He does fight against Tsukishima, but like Tsukishima isn't really playing. Okay, Cone Lion. Obviously Cone would lose. Let's just restart. Let's restart. We've had a few spins for Ichigo Full Bring Cloak. Let's do a new one. So first combatant. Combatant number 1 is Senna. We've already talked about Senna in this series, but sure. Senna, who's like a 3rd seat level. Oh my goodness, no. This is what I recently added. Okay, fine, let's talk about this, but this will be a quick one. Alright. So, combatant number 1, Senna. And that's a fine color for Senna. Let's just make her name bigger. She's very autumnal. And then we have I'm just gonna do KR for characterizer. And we'll characterizer erotica. And let's just change that pink to be a bit more deeper pink. No, that doesn't look as good. Let's change Senna a little bit to be a bit more brown. Golden brown, maybe. Okay, so Senna is the not Jinchuriki, is the, I can't remember the term, but she is the conglomeration of lost memories as a person. She's a soul reaper. This is the Memories of Nobody, the first movie. She is a soul reaper, appears as a soul reaper. She has a lot of different memories, which would be interesting with Tsukishima. But she has a Zanpakuto, which she can release into Shikai, and it's like this golden spear that seems to have this like wind dancing power, where she can like create a tornado with her movements, and it can like damage and destroy the blanks, which don't seem too powerful. And then Karakuriza Erotica is probably my least favorite character to talk about, because what's her name? Chizuru is just a normal human who is in Ichigo's class. I really don't like talking about this character, but we got it on the spin. She is given a superhero outfit designed by Urahara or Urahara and Uryu, which gives her powers. And she is kind of a weirdo. She's a little, perverted, and she's into girls. Let's just say that. This is, somebody just joined the stream. This is a really weird time to join the stream. I don't like talking about Karakuriza Erotica, but essentially, when she sees a woman that she finds attractive, she gains like superhuman powers and stuff. Oh look, they just left. Bye bye. I don't blame you. She gains superhuman power. This is embarrassing. I don't want to talk about this character. She gains superhuman powers, and she pursues them. And she's a bit of a, assaulter. She doesn't really care about people's personal space. And Senna is a woman. So Karakura, basically, if she was fighting against any male character, she would lose aside from maybe Kon. She would probably beat up Kon. Either way. Yeah, so Karakuriza Erotica, we only seen her fight a standard Arrancar, like this bunny Arrancar, who got sexually assaulted by her, and she was very uncomfortable, and she ran away and managed to occupy her for the fight, which is probably one of my least favorite moments in Bleach. But that's what happens. She's got like superhuman strength, and she can keep up with Sonido. So her speed is very good. Her speed is very powerful. She can keep up with people. You can't really run away from her, and she can grapple you and stuff like that. But she doesn't really have any hard hitting moves. Senna is fairly agile, and can have a spear. So I don't think Senna could outrun Karakuriza Erotica if Karakuriza Erotica finds her attractive, and she's a young woman, so she probably does. Let's just say she does. So she actually has powers, because if she doesn't, she's just a normal human and she loses. So she would definitely be able to keep up with Senna. Senna definitely is like a free spirit, would not appreciate Karakuriza Erotica, and she'd get grappled by her, and she could probably push her off with spiritual pressure or release her Shikai or do something. Either way, it's going to be a fairly even fight, but Karakuriza Erotica isn't really going to want to finish the fight unless Senna just like runs away. So I think Senna would probably win ultimately, but I didn't like talking about this fight, and I didn't even change the fight number 1, and somebody came in onto the live stream talking about this while I was talking about Karakuriza Erotica, and it was a little embarrassing, so let's move on to fight number 4. Oh my goodness, I don't know who that was, but they came in at the worst time. Kind of funny though. Alright, back to the wheel. They are a Bleach character, so who is a combatant, so I put them on there. Okay, Keigo Asano. Regular, that's not Karakuriza Delicate. Keigo Asano versus Charlotte Coolhorn. Charlotte Coolhorn would win. Keigo Asano versus... We're not getting so lucky with the spins. Usually we get really cool matchups. Kusaka again. Kusaka would win. 3 strikes and you're out, Keigo. Gene Carrier would win. Okay, let's spin for a new combatant number 1. Combatant number 1 is Yoshino, which is... That's the lady. There's 2 bouts. There's one called Yoshino and one called Yoshi. I think Yoshino is the one who is Uryu's mom. So, yeah. Yoshino is combatant number 1, and combatant number 2 is Muramasa. Interesting. Yeah, Yoshino is the bout lady who has Gerte, the fire elemental guy. Sure, let's talk about this. This could be interesting. So Yoshino, and let's give her a deep orange. Yoshino versus Murumasa. Murumasa? Is that how you spell it? And let's give Muramasa a royal purple. Okay. Muramasa and Yoshino. Yoshino is a bout which are similar to Quincy's in the fact that they are a human tribe who have gained powers through a mutation in the... through a mutation that was caused by an experiment in the research and development, or the Soul Society was conducting an experiment, and there was like radiation or like some sort of spiritual release that this experiment did. Basically the resulting meltdown of an experiment made some souls in the like cycle of life, or like the cycle of rebirth, mutate to have special powers. So these are humans born with special powers. They have Germanic influences culturally, as we see them in the show, and they have dolls, which they can summon. Zeigadich Dolch, Goethe. So Yoshino has Goethe. So they're kind of human, but they're vampires in a way. So they can leech life and continue to live, and they can sort of they seem to have ways to reinforce themselves in spiritual ways, like with the Quincy. So they are pretty strong. They're kind of like superhuman. There's some tropes of vampires being superhumanly strong and fast and jumps and stuff like that. Just imagine that. So they're like superhumanly strong in many ways, but they still are flesh and blood and stuff like that. They're not soul based. They're not Konpaku. And then they can summon a doll, which is sort of part of their soul or part of their powers. And it's a little bit like Fullbringer, where you need to have an object. You kind of siphon that power through an emotional connection with an object, whether it's like a deck of cards, a little talisman, a piece of jewelry, an orb, I don't know. But it doesn't come from the object. It's not the object or your relationship with the object. The object just helps funnel the ability that is inherent in your soul. And so it's sort of more, it's less of like Fullbringer and more sort of a bit more like a Zanpakuto spirit. But it's not a Zanpakuto spirit, which we'll get to when we talk to Muramasa. It is still a physical manifestation, so it's a physical thing. Like humans can see this. It's not invisible. It's not a soul. It's a physical, freak of nature sort of idea. And Yoshino's is like this fire elemental called Goethe, and Yoshino has this maternal theme, where Goethe supposedly represents a child that she wished to have, but she was infertile because she was about, or something like that. So it's sort of like this. They have this strange maternal relationship. Yoshino has to her own power, or her Goethe, and Goethe, when eventually they die, Goethe is willing to sacrifice himself for Yoshino. And we also get this interesting idea of Bounce being able to fuse with their doll that we don't really see anywhere else besides Kariya, who fuses his powers in himself, so he doesn't really need a doll. And then, Go Koga. Koga also turns, after Zygadich Dolch dies, he concentrates his powers, instead of into that personality, his doll, he concentrates it into a weapon, which is this big axe, and he can survive for a little bit longer without dying. Because typically when the doll dies, you die, but Koga reserves some of his powers and formed it into an axe. It's a little bit funny there, but Yoshino, in her fight against Kariya, fuses with Goethe as he's dying, and she becomes like the Human Torch, kind of, which is pretty cool, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's Yoshino. The loses against Kariya, but Kariya is pretty strong. Muramasa, on the other hand, is a Zanpakuto spirit who Master was sealed away, and typically they can't live independently of their Zanpakuto spirit for very long, and their ability is to forcefully manifest Zanpakuto spirits, and he can brainwash them by calling them and playing off of their gripes with their owners and stuff like that, but it is brainwashing. It's not of their own accord. So Muramasa, being manifested without his master there, he can't sustain himself properly. He's not sustainably manifested, so he needs to feed on hollows to stay there. And he has like this, if he doesn't have enough hollow powers, spiritual energy to sustain his form, or if he's just struggling to digest that hollow power to sustain his Zanpakuto form, he has coughing fits where he coughs up blood and stuff like that, and it also affects his abilities, where he pauses his abilities. But Muramasa has a sword. He's a Zanpakuto spirit, so he can move fast. He can use Soul Reaper sort of techniques, like he has his own fast high speed technique, which I think is actually different from Shunpo. But yeah, he has that, so he can move fast, he can hit fast, he can be hit, and he has decent durability. His powers are to disrupt people. Like he makes Ichigo, he like hits Ichigo with like this wave where he disorientates Ichigo and makes him feel like the world is spinning. He can also pull Zanpakuto spirits out of people and turn them against their owners, which won't work on Yoshino because it's not a Zanpakuto spirit. It doesn't work that way. Even though he pulls out Old Man Zangetsu, who isn't a Zanpakuto spirit really, in the filler arc, he's still a spirit inside of Ichigo, part of Ichigo's personality. And although the dolls are kind of like that, they're not spirit-based. They are powers manifested in physical ways. So I don't think that would work on him. I'm sure Muramasa would probably try, but it wouldn't work. He couldn't turn... I don't think Muramasa could turn Goethe against Yoshino, especially with their connection or whatever. But connection aside, Muramasa can typically do that. Aside from I'm not going to talk about it, but one thing about the Zanpakuto, there's a lot of things that annoy me about the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc, but one of them is it doesn't seem to matter how deep the connection is between the Zanpakuto and the owner. He can just brainwash them, which I know was the same for Tsukishima, but this is very different where it's supposed to be like manipulation or like hypnosis, and I feel like characters like Komamura, their Zanpakuto he has such a close connection with them, shouldn't be able to. Like people like Shuhei, definitely, where there's already ambiguousness, or Hozukimaru, or Fujikujaku. They should have, or Rurikujaku. They definitely could have been easily swayed or manipulated or hypnotized, but I think like Komamura's Bankai, Kokujo Tengen Myo, or what I guess Tenken is his Zanpakuto spirit. I feel like he shouldn't have been turned, but he was the first one to go, basically. Essentially, anyway, that's just like a little note. But Muramasa is pretty strong. He also can do this thing where he has these invisible tendrils that you can only see in the reflection of things like glass and water that can pin somebody down and immobilize them. So, how would this fight go? Muramasa is definitely more physically strong than Yoshino, but he also has difficulty maintaining his form. So, even if he's in a good position or has Yoshino pinned down with one of his ways of like disorientating her or restraining her, there is a chance he would go into a coughing fit and she would get an opportunity to break out and attack him. That being said, Yoshino isn't going to be able to do anything at all by herself, so she has to summon Goethe, her doll, to fight Muramasa, definitely. Goethe would come out. Goethe isn't particularly strong, so I feel like Muramasa would try to be like, oh, is this some sort of Zanpakuto spirit? And Muramasa might try and hypnotize or, turn Goethe against Yoshino, but Goethe would just smack him right in full blown, just like, plow into Muramasa. That won't do much damage to Muramasa, I imagine, but Muramasa would get the idea, oh, this is something different. I can't manipulate this creature against Yoshino. So Goethe can't be hypnotized or brainwashed like a Zanpakuto spirit can. But that's not going to do too much damage to Muramasa, especially as he seems to be able to take down very strong hollows to consume them. So Muramasa would then probably try and either disorientate or restrain Yoshino with his like abilities to like make people dizzy or confused, or like what he does with Ichigo in their first fight, or his invisible tendrils. So if he tried to disorientate Yoshino, that wouldn't stop Goethe from fighting, because Goethe can fight independently, but depends heavily on Yoshino to direct him. But if Yoshino is being like confused or disorientated, Goethe would take incentive and attack Muramasa to break him out of that. And although Muramasa can disable people, it seems to be something he can't really do while multitasking. So even though Yoshino is much weaker than Muramasa, pretty much everything Muramasa can do and all of his strengths, Yoshino is pretty good against that. So Muramasa 3 main things is manipulating Zanpakuto spirits to turn against their owners, disorientating people, and then also restraining them with his tendrils. And we already talked about why 2 of those probably wouldn't work and would result in Muramasa getting a few, Goethe getting a few good hits on Muramasa. The tendrils, definitely Goethe doesn't seem intelligent enough to figure out that there's something invisible, like physically in there, but invisible, restraining Yoshino. So Muramasa could probably use his tendrils to get Yoshino or strangle her or whatever, and Goethe wouldn't really know what to do. Maybe Goethe would maybe try and attack Muramasa, but I feel like Muramasa could evade Goethe, as long as Goethe didn't hit the tendrils themselves or did something to I think it is sort of reflection based, but I don't know if you disrupt the... I think there was something weird about when Ichigo disrupted the reflection of the water, it also got rid of the tendrils. But then I think sometimes we see Muramasa do it where there isn't anything reflective around, so I don't know how that would work. Either way, I think Goethe would struggle to break Yoshino out of that, and Muramasa might be able to evade while doing that. But then we get into the likelihood at this point in the fight that he would have a coughing spurt, because he seems to pretty much always be susceptible to those, and if he hasn't had one by the time he's tried out these other 2 things, by the time he's doing this 3rd thing, he probably will have one while he's trying to evade and strangle Yoshino. So let's say he has a coughing fit, Yoshino breaks out, is recovering, Goethe is waiting for instruction, and let's say Goethe goes for it, Muramasa is hit pretty bad, but then cuts Goethe badly or something, and let's say Yoshino and Goethe have to fuse as their last resort. They can fuse, and they could probably fight Muramasa equally, put Muramasa on the back foot maybe a little bit, but I think Muramasa would win. And even if Muramasa's losing, if he starts to get injured too much, then maybe his hollow energy and the hollow spiritual energy that he's absorbed will take over. And if Muramasa holifies, there is absolutely no way Yoshino can do anything, even if she's fused with Goethe. So I think the fight would probably end before that anyway, but just in case it didn't and Yoshino fused with Goethe manages to live long enough to damage Muramasa enough that he would go hollow, he would holify, then it's just over. It's just over. It's too much of a big event for Yoshino to deal with, and I think her time when she's fused with Goethe is limited anyway. So I think it would probably end before that, but Muramasa would definitely be injured, and Yoshino would die. So that's how I think this 4th fight would go, and we're about an hour in, so let's try and see if we can squeeze one more fight in. And then I'm gonna have lunch. Ichinose, I like Ichinose versus Haribel. Haribel would win. I don't know why we keep getting similar, like it feels like we're getting a smaller pool of characters for some reason. Adhuches Hollow. Sure, let's talk quickly about Ichinose versus Adhuches. Also, that's not how you spell it. I know there's a J in there, I just don't know how to spell it. Yeah, anyway. Sure, let's do this. Adhuches. Adhuches. I don't know how you say this. I don't know how you pronounce that, but let's just keep it like that. Maybe somebody can correct me. sure. Hollow works. Hollow is purple. It's a purple thing sometimes. And Yoshino is being replaced by Ichinose, who we will give a kind of a light blue. And fight number 5. Okay, cool. So Ichinose versus Adhuches Hollow. What do we know about Ichinose? So Ichinose was a squad member of Squad 11. So he clearly has pretty good zanjutsu skills and physical skills, probably. Kind of weird because his Shikai is similar to Tozen's, which I guess the current Squad 11 would disapprove of, but Ichinose didn't really like the current Squad 11. He liked the older one and the old captain's lead, who we don't know their name of, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, funny we never find that out, but I guess they were trying to skirt around stating that in a filler arc. But yeah, he's pretty strong. He has a strong Shikai, Benisidare, I believe, and he can sort of it's revolving around blinding light, so he can make a blinding light appear that kind of like cuts at people. He can also make a dome where everything is illuminated and the dome grows and you get stuck in it, and it's basically like Tozen's Bankai, but instead of it being like a sensory deprivation chamber, it's like overstimulation, or like everything's super bright, and it's hard to tell, like Ichinose can just attack you from any angle essentially, but it's not like you don't have any of your senses. It's just they're kind of overwhelmed, or at least your sense of sight is overwhelmed, and there's like reverberation in there, so it's hard to tell like what direction people are coming in. So it's extremely similar to his Tozen's Bankai, which is a little disappointing because it's fighting against Kenpachi, but I really like the Ichinose versus Kenpachi fight anyway, and Ichinose seems to be able to boost his sword attacks by turning it into this rainbow sheen thing. So he seems to be able to cut people by flashing this blinding light. He seems to be able to stun them, put them in a dome that deprives them of their ability to sense what direction he's about to come from, and he can also increase the power of his sword swings with it, I think. Typical Adhuches Hollow will give difficulty to seated officers, but you know, when you get into 3rd seat lieutenant, this should not be a big deal, really. Captains, this is very easy, essentially. But I guess for 3rd seats, maybe an Adhuches might prove with some difficulty. But this is not a Arrancar. This is a typical Hollow, but I feel like it can vary depending on the Adhuches. Now, this is weird because Adhuches can be difficult to distinguish between normal Hollows and Adhuches. Adhuches seem to be more intelligent, I suppose, but then early in the series, the regular Hollows seem to talk a lot more, whilst they kind of become sort of just roaring beasts, and the time spent like with speaking roles is more with the Adhuches Hollows or the Arrancar. So it's a bit hard to tell sometimes, but I'm pretty sure when they were in like Mongolia or something, or like northwest China, in that scene where Ichinose has left the Soul Society and he's wandering through like this steppe or like this desert, and he's very weak and comes across this hollow that is like chasing these souls of these humans and trying to eat them. Ichinose, being incredibly weak at the time, struggles to fight against this hollow. I'm pretty sure that was just supposed to be a regular hollow, not an Adhuches. And I have someone here say, Ron V, saying yo, what's up? Thanks for popping in, Ron. I'm just finishing up my final fight here. Ichinose versus a regular Adhuches Hollow. So yeah, that is when Ichinose is very weak and he needs the assistance of Jin Kariya to fight a regular Hollow. But yes, Ichinose. Formerly of Squad 11, that Ichinose. 1 second. Yeah. So if Ichinose was in good condition, what do we see him do? So we see him go pretty well against Ichigo in the bout arc when he is struggling or can't quite get his Bankai yet. So Shikai Ichigo he can fight pretty well against. He also fights against Kenpachi Zaraki, and he gives a good fight, but it's not an even fight. It's very one-sided. But he still manages to fight pretty well against Zaraki. I think the best one to talk about is probably his fight with Ichigo, because at this point Ichigo definitely could beat a Gillian. He's definitely lieutenant, maybe captain level, although he's not. Sorry for the interruption. He's not in. He is in the world of the living, and that difference means he doesn't quite have enough spiritual pressure for his Bankai. That being said, he was in the world of the living in this Agent of the Shimigami arc where he managed to injure a Gillian. So I imagine at this point, with having a Shikai, a Gillian is no problem, and Adhuches Hollow should maybe be a little bit of a problem, but I think he could still take them, especially as with his Bankai he manages to fight against a Rancor pretty well, even though he's no match for any of the Esparta he fights up against in the early Rancor saga. So I would say Ichinose would probably be able to beat the Adhuches Hollow with some difficulty. I don't think it would be an easy fight for him, especially if it has a nasty ability. But I think he would definitely win if he used his Shikai, especially his dome technique. And I don't think an Adhuches Hollow is really intelligent enough or tanky enough to be able to do what Zaraki would do against like Tozen's Deprivation Chamber. And Ichinose light dome is very similar, so Ichinose can attack the Hollow from any direction and the Hollow can't really react to it. I think that is pretty much what I would consider Ichinose's ultimate technique, and I think that would just hard counter the Adhuches Hollow. Would he need to use it? I don't think so. I think his Blinding Light technique or like his Rainbow Sword would probably be enough to, and his skills. We don't really see him using Hado, but he was from Squad 11, so that doesn't surprise me really. But I do think it's not going to be an easy fight. I would peg Ichinose probably towards the higher Adhuches Hollow range, but obviously not Vaster Lorde or anything like that. I think he would struggle against a regular Numeros Arrancar, possibly, maybe. So if he struggles against an Arrancar Adhuches, a regular Adhuches, I think he wouldn't really stand it. Like, I think he would just win, using his Shikai at least. So I think there's not really much anything else to talk about with this fight. I think it would go to Ichinose. Yeah. So thanks for popping in, Ron V. You kind of caught me at the end of my stream there, and as you could tell, I got interrupted a few times, so I need to go and deal with a couple things. But thank you for joining me live, and for those who are joining me retroactively and watching this after the fact. I hope you enjoyed, and I would like to do a few more of these, maybe in the coming weeks. I agree, though. Okay, thank you. It is weird. I feel like it's really difficult. Sometimes I feel like I might be completely off when I'm just rambling by myself. It's kind of hard to gauge things, especially because an Adhuches Hollow is like a class. It's not a specific character. But I'm glad you agree. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. God loves you. Have a blessed day, and I will be doing more Bleach random versus live streams. Ron, as you've not been here, I have this big spinning wheel with 232 Bleach characters on it. So I do 2 random ones, and I make them fight, usually 3 to 5 fights per stream. So maybe catch me another time. Have a wonderful day, and I will see